learn from my experience so that somewhere down the road you don't have a kid that hardly eats anything that you're fretting about because they've become underweight and they'll go long stretches of time hardly eating anything. Oh. I pulled a muscle yesterday. I slid on the ice and I stayed standing, but it was just, that was a mistake, I think. The bouncy was a mistake. Anyways. When you have a kid with autism, one of the first questions you are often asked is whether you've tried a gluten-free diet, whether you've tried a gluten-free Casein diet, have you taken your kids off wheat and dairy? Some version of that often comes up. Have you tried GAPS? Are you willing to try the GAPS diet? It's just a very, very popular question, and it's a very popular topic. I already talked about our experience with GAPS and gluten-free and casein-free diets in an earlier video. The result for us is that Maggie isn't any different at this point when she was without gluten and casein for 2 years as she is with it when we reintroduced it back. We didn't see a change the final time when we introduced it back into her diet, and so she is allowed to have whatever she wants now. I, however, have some very major regrets at this point in having ever put her on that diet, and that is what I want to talk about today. A lot of parents with kids with autism put their kids on a gluten-free or casein-free diet, gluten-free and casein-free diet, or some variation of it. Some of the diets are even more strict, like the GAPS diet. And a lot of people swear by these diets. A lot of people are really, really desperate to cure their kids, and I think that is where a lot of the miracle diets come from. Of course, it's important to have a well-rounded diet as your kids get older. It also oftentimes gets more difficult with kids who may have an increasingly narrow list of foods that they're willing to eat, and that is why I have these regrets. When I first started out and decided to put her on a gluten-free casein-free diet, it wasn't entirely because I had jumped on board this whole gluten-free, casein-free wagon, and I was being asked pretty frequently whether or not we had tried it. Although that was true, it seemed like at least once a week someone was asking me if we had tried it pretty soon after she was diagnosed. The thing was, at that point in time, Patch had a really severe dairy allergy to the point where we were carrying an EpiPen around and we had to be super, super careful about what he ate. So I wasn't cooking with dairy at all because I just didn't even want to deal with cross-contamination. I didn't want to deal with someone's sippy cup getting into his hands and him drinking it. I didn't want to take a chance of there being an accident. It wasn't like his 3 or 5-year-old sisters were responsible enough for them to make sure he didn't get a hold of what they were eating. It was just easier to make dairy-free food for everyone. At the same time, Sadie had been having stomach aches. Her doctor did a blood test, and that blood test showed that she was allergic to wheat. She wasn't super allergic like Patrick, but we eliminated wheat. And at the same time, I heard all these things about how gluten-free, casein-free diet might help Maggie. And to me, she had a brother and a sister that were allergic to these things, so it made sense. Like, hey, maybe she's allergic too. Her doctor tested her, but when her doctor tested her, she'd been off them already for about 4 months. And I'd read a lot about how sometimes if you're already off of something for a while, the blood test might come back negative. So I thought that was probably it. So we just went on the way we were going. We did that for a couple years. After that, we found out Sadie was allergic to a whole lot of other things. So she had a list of 5 things she was allergic to. Then when Patrick and Sadie started to outgrow their allergies, around that time, Maggie got a hold of something with wheat in it, because of course she did. And she had it, and she didn't have any sort of reaction. And that was when I decided to give it a try, because our entire family had been on a gluten-free, casein-free diet for a while. We had done GAPS for quite a while too, which was even more strict than our gluten-free, casein-free diet. And I was ready to be able to buy regular food. It was expensive to be on these special diets, and I just wanted to be able to make whatever I made. I wanted to be able to cook with cheese. I really missed cooking with cheese. So that's what I did. So we tried to reintroduce it, and we saw absolutely no changes in her behavior, in anything really. She was fine. She was the same little kid. Her behavior, her performance at school, nothing changed. And that was when we basically let her have everything. And this is where my regrets come in, because before the diet, she was my best eater. She loved food. She ate everything. She was crazy about anything that was bread, milk. Anything dairy, anything milk. she loved it. And then she couldn't have it for 2 years. I mean, of course, I tried so many recipes. I had so many cookbooks. I was constantly trying different breads, different pastries, different crackers. I mean, I baked so many things. We bought so many things, but it's not the same. When you take gluten out of things, it's not the same. We found one fairly good cookbook, but even then, we never found any breads that were really comparable to the best yeast rolls and yeast breads. It just wasn't the same. She definitely didn't love bread the same way as she loved any of the breads that she had before we gave up gluten, and the same thing for milk. She loved drinking milk before, and she loved a lot of foods that when we gave up gluten and casein, she just stopped eating a lot of things. Over those years, the foods that she ate became narrower and narrower and more restrictive. By the end of the 2 years, she had a fairly restrictive diet. When I reintroduced those foods to her, I thought that she would immediately start eating all the foods that she loved before. And that didn't happen. She didn't immediately start eating bread or milk. Occasionally now, I can get her to drink milk at home. Apparently at school, she'll drink the little milk carton at lunchtime, I've been told. But she still doesn't eat bread like she used to. She doesn't eat most of the things that she used to love. And that really makes me sad, because we have lost so many foods that she loved. And I do wonder if we would have lost those foods if we hadn't tried this stupid diet. Because I got sucked into an idea that doesn't have any solid research or proof behind it or findings that it actually helps in any way. And obviously at this point my philosophy and my outlook has completely changed from where it was when she was first diagnosed. That point, if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have said that I was trying to cure her. I would have said that I was worried that these foods were making her sick, and that they were making her uncomfortable, and that she was having more behaviors because she was more uncomfortable, and that was why. And in my mind, it made sense because her brother and sister had allergies, Sadie had stomach aches. I just thought, hey, maybe Maggie can't tell me, and that was what was going on. But really, without any test results like Sadie and Patrick both had to tell me that they actually had allergies, I was just guessing. In the end, she could have all of those foods and she was fine. It really didn't seem to make a difference at all. So I really regret that, because I took away so many of her favorite foods unnecessarily, and when I gave them back to her, she didn't want them anymore. That's really sad. Now it's so much harder to keep weight on her. She was this muscular little girl, and now I regularly get notes home from school and from therapy because they're worried that she's not eating enough. Everyone notices and starts sending me notes when they think she's getting too thin. It's a regular and real struggle, and I really feel guilty that I kicked it off by putting her on her first restrictive diet by not letting her eat things that she loved that were perfectly healthy and perfectly fine, because I bought into the woo of a gluten-free, casein-free diet. And one of the pediatricians even said to me that there was absolutely no evidence that it would make any difference in a child with autism, and I just kind of blew it off because it was what everyone was doing. It was what everyone I talked to was talking about, and everyone swore that it worked. And I think sometimes when you want to believe something works badly enough, you see what you want to see. And I think for a while that even happened with us. But long term, it definitely was not the best thing for her, and it was even damaging. If you are considering a diet for your child that isn't medically recommended by their doctor, it is definitely something to keep in mind. Healthy foods of all kinds are always good choices, but severely restricting foods that are normally eaten because you're hoping for some sort of a cure, learn from my experience, so that somewhere down the road you don't have a kid that hardly eats anything that you're fretting about because they've become underweight and they'll go long stretches of time hardly eating anything. Anyways, that is it for today. If you like this video, we'd love it if you'd hit thumbs up, and if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.